Good morning, everybody. I'm Miss Emily, and welcome to what is usually StoryCraft. StoryCraft is taking a very short break. I promise it will be back in November. I like doing the crafts too much to get away from it. But I thought it would be really fun. Since it is October and it's Halloween, I thought we could do Hallow-STEAM, which means we're going to be doing some experiments with our books instead of some crafts. And the book that I'm starting off with this week has to do with cookies. Now, who doesn't like cookies? But I've decided to do cookies because October is also National Cookie Month. So we're going to do a fun cookie experiment today. And if you want to do this experiment along too, you guys can stop by the library starting today and pick up your own little kit. And in this kit will be some cookies and your experiment sheet. So this will have a spot for you to write your predictions and your results of your experiment. Plus it has the instructions too. So since this video is coming out Tuesday morning and you may not be able to get to the library right away to get this kit is going to be available all week. And as I go through this video, I'm going to tell you places where you should pause if you want to do the experiment yourself and see what the results are before you see my results. So that way you don't spoil the experiment for yourself. All right, so I hope that's very clear. I hope you guys are excited to do some experiments. And let's go ahead and get started. The book I'm going to read today is called Bears Make the Best Science Buddies. And this is written by Carmen Oliver and illustrated by Jean-Claude. So, bears make the best science buddies. And in the front here, it has a little picture of the scientific method. So you observe, you make a hypothesis, you experiment, and you analyze the results. And you'll see that when you go to do your experiment, we're going to be doing all those things. So, bears make the best science buddies. The school year had just begun, and Adelaide and Bear were looking forward to their first science lab. But the students couldn't agree on the first experiment. "Let's make exploding lava," Theo said. "The potato clock looks fun," said Rebecca. "I want to learn how clouds make rain," said Milo. "What do you think, Bear?" Adelaide asked. Bear rubbed his belly. "I agree," Adelaide said. "The milk and cookie dunk experiment is a great idea. You can't go wrong with milk and cookies." "Looks like we will need to take a vote," Mrs. Fitzpea announced. "Your idea will definitely win," Adelaide whispered to Bear. "Everyone loves milk and cookies." But when everyone voted, Adelaide's prediction was incorrect. "We have a 4-way tie," said Mrs. Fitzpea. Adelaide raised her hand. "We should draw sticks to see who gets to pick the experiment. That's what Bear would do." "Excellent idea, Adelaide," Mrs. Fitzpea said. "Let's head outside." The class gathered sticks from the schoolyard. "Whoever has the shortest stick will pick our first experiment," said Mrs. Fitzpea. Theo's stick was the shortest. "I want to do all 4 experiments," he said, surprising everyone. 4 experiments in one lab?" Mrs. Fitzpea said. "That's highly improbable." "But not impossible, especially with Bear," Adelaide said. "Bears make the best science buddies because they practice safety first. And whether they're in a classroom or out in the woods, bears have a wild curiosity, just like scientists. They ask all the right questions." So some of the questions Bear would ask would be, how does, what happens if, what do you do when? And to answer those questions, bears use their 5 senses to observe every sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. They use this evidence to make their best guesses, Adelaide continued. And their pencil-sharp claws are great at recording their results and encouraging you to do the same, Theo added. Theo continued, bears make the best science buddies because they know that every experiment leads to a new discovery. That's the best part, Adelaide said. They believe in you and will cheer you on with a big roar so you'll keep going. Is there anything this bear can't do? Mrs. Fitzpea asked. Bear answered by roving from station to station, helping the class test out the various science experiments. Wow, I never expected that. I predicted it. Roar! At the end of the science lab, Bear and Adelaide looked forward to one last experiment. And it was delicious. So the last experiment that Adelaide and Bear did was the Great Milk and Cookie Dunk experiment. So that is the experiment that I'm going to show you guys how to do right now. Okay, so to do this experiment, you're going to have to provide glasses with some milk. I recommend doing clear glasses so you can see everything that's going on inside of your glasses, and you can use any kind of milk. So it can be regular milk, it could be soy milk, almond milk, coconut milk, whatever kind of milk you have at home. So I have my 4 glasses of milk here, and that means that now I need 4 different cookies. So the types of cookies I'm going to use today are a vanilla wafer, a chocolate covered mint cookie, a chocolate chip cookie, and one of those chocolate cookies with the cream in the middle, a chocolate sandwich cookie. So the first thing I want to do in my experiment is I want to observe, and I'm going to observe my cookies. And basically that means I'm going to look at these cookies and examine them and see what is different about them, what may be the same about them. So you want to look at things like, how do they feel? Do some cookies feel lighter than others? Are some cookies thicker than others maybe? So after you've made some observations, our next step is to make a hypothesis. So after you've observed your cookies, we're going to do what's called making a hypothesis, which is basically a really good guess based on our observations about what we think is going to happen in the experiment. So you guys will have this handy little chart in your bags if you come pick up a bag. I wrote my chart here on my whiteboard. I know it's kind of hard for you guys to see, so I'll tell you what everything says. So this column is my cookie type. So here's my chocolate sandwich cookie, my chocolate chip cookie, my vanilla wafer, and my chocolate covered mint. And now here in this column, I'm going to write my predictions or my hypotheses or my guesses as to what I think what's going to happen to each cookie. And then after I do the experiment, I'm going to write down what actually happened to each cookie to see if I was right and if I made correct hypothesis. So we're going to start, let me grab my marker here up at the top. I have a chocolate sandwich cookie, which is this guy. So if you guys are doing this experiment on your own, you might want to take a pause because I'm going to talk a little bit about each cookie. So you might want to do your cookie observations before you hear mine, okay? Okay, so here are my observations about the cookies. I'm going to start off with the chocolate sandwich cookie. So technically this is 2 cookies put together and there's cream in the middle. To me, this is kind of a heavy cookie. So you know what? My guess is that since this cookie is heavy, it's going to sink. So I'm going to come to my chart and I'm going to write sink. I think that cookie is going to sink. My next cookie is my chocolate chip cookie. Now this is a pretty thick cookie as well, and it's got chocolate chips in it. It's got heavy little chocolate chips in there. And this is also a pretty heavy cookie, I think. So you know what? I'm going to guess that this cookie is going to sink as well. So, excuse me, so sink. My next cookie is my vanilla wafer, and that's this guy. Now this is a really small cookie. It's pretty thin and it's really, really lightweight. So you know what? I'm going to guess that this cookie is going to float. And now I have my chocolate covered mint cookie. And this cookie I think is going to be really, really tricky because it's kind of thin and it's maybe kind of lightweight, but it's got chocolate all over it. So do you think the chocolate might make it heavier and might make it sink? You know what? I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to guess that the chocolate mint cookie is going to sink. Okay, so now here are all of my guesses. I guess that the chocolate sandwich cookie is going to sink, the chocolate chip cookie is going to sink, the vanilla wafer is going to float, and the chocolate mint cookie is going to sink. So let's go ahead now and do the experiment and find out what happens. If you guys are doing the experiment on your own and you don't want to see how my experiment goes, now's a good time to pause and then come back after you do your experiment to find out if our experiments came out the same. Okay, so here are my glasses of milk and my cookies again. So let's start from over here, and all I'm going to do is take my cookie and I'm going to just very gently drop it into the glass. I'm going to move this glass. Actually, let's move the glass up so we can definitely see what's happening. So here's my cookie. I'm going to drop it in, and remember, I guessed that this cookie was going to float. So here we go. Let's see what happens. I'm going to carefully put it in and check it out. It's floating. I got that one right. All right. So the next one here is my chocolate mint cookie. Now remember, I said I thought this one was going to be a tricky cookie because it has the chocolate on it, and I thought maybe the chocolate would make it heavy. So let's move my glass forward, and here we go. Let's see what happens. I thought it was going to sink. What's it going to do? It floats. I got that one wrong. Holy cow, look at that. The chocolate mint cookie floats. Okay, so next here is my chocolate chip cookie. Now I said this cookie was kind of heavy, plus it had those chocolate chips in there. I think this one for sure is going to sink. All right, are we ready to find out? Let's put it in. It floats to, whoa. It floated for a second and then it sunk. I did not expect that at all. So I wonder, do we say if that floats or sinks? I don't know. We'll have to talk about that in a minute. And then here's my last one. Here's my chocolate sandwich cookie. And I also guessed that this one was going to sink because it's really like 2 cookies plus there's filling in there. So let's see what's going to happen with this one. It floats. Well, I didn't expect that either. So here is all of my cookies. And we can see 3 of the cookies floated. And they're all actually still floating. Although I think this one may be starting to sink a little. I bet you it's soaking up that milk and it's starting to sink. And actually, did you guys just see that? My chocolate sandwich cookie just sunk. That's really, really interesting. I did not expect that to happen either. And look what happened here. There went my vanilla cookie. The only cookie that's left now is my chocolate mint cookie, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. I wonder if that chocolate makes it so that the cookie can't absorb the milk, and that's why it's floating the longest. We're going to go with what happened right away. Since the cookie sat in the milk a little bit, we're not going to take those as our results. We're going to take those first results as our results. All right, so I am back now with my chart, and now we're going to write in our results. So my chocolate sandwich cookie, I thought it was going to sink, and it eventually did, but it floated for a little bit before it sunk. So I'm going to go ahead and decide and say, oops, helps if Miss Emily can spell. I'm going to go ahead and say that it floated because it did float for a good couple of seconds before it sank. So I'm going to give that a float, and that means that I guessed wrong on that chocolate sandwich cookie. So the next one was the chocolate chip, and I thought it was going to sink. So you know what? I'm going to say that that cookie sunk because it floated for only a very, very, very little time before then it sank. So I'm going to write that it sank, and I got that one right. So here's our vanilla wafer. And I guessed that that one was going to float, and that one definitely did float. It took a long time for that one to sink. So I'm going to say float, and that's another one that I got right. So last but definitely not least, because these are one of my favorite kinds of cookies, is my chocolate covered mint cookie. I thought it was going to sink, and it totally did not sink at all. It floated. So I was wrong about that cookie, and I am still wrong about that cookie, because if you guys can see, it is still floating away in there. I don't know if it's ever going to sink. So that's the end of the experiment for me. But if you guys want to keep on experimenting, if you look at your prediction sheet all the way at the end here, I put an extra little experiment that you could do, and this is to predict how long until the cookie sinks. So if you haven't done your experiment yet, you could do this at the same time that you put your cookies in. You could put the cookie in and time it and see how many seconds it takes until the cookie sinks. Or you could get totally different cookies. Maybe you have some different cookies at your house that you want to do this experiment with. You can make predictions if they're going to float or sink, and then also time how long it takes them to sink. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys come and pick up your little kit. There's, like I said, there's cookies and your prediction sheet with your instructions here at the library. Come on up to the children's room and pick up your kit. And I will see you guys all next week with another experiment. Bye-bye.